I wanted to start today by sharing with you that we're going to talk about yoga today. We haven't talked about yoga in a while, and I want to bring that back into the conversation. Yoga has been such a powerful tool for me and a gateway that led me into deepening my meditation practice, farther in my journey, exploring more of my spirituality. And in fact, while I was doing my yoga teacher training, I created the Sacred Practices Yoga Deck. It's a 52 card yoga deck that includes 49 cards that break down each chakra and yoga poses to support it. It offers you a visualization, meditation with each one, and it explores into the chakras a little bit more and helps you connect how different poses affect your body's energy. You'll find more information about the Sacred Practices Yoga Deck on our website. I'm Cris Greer, host of the Grounding Journey podcast. As a 40-something mom, business owner, yoga lover, and longtime spiritual seeker, I've been craving deeper connections, the kind that arise from authentic conversations about the challenges, questions, and triumphs we all experience in life. I'm so glad you're here. I am so excited, guys, that we have Manpreet on today. She is a Kundalini yoga teacher, sacred chant artist, and creator of reality. Welcome, welcome. I'm so excited you're here and for the conversation today.
Oh, so excited to be here as well.
So I'm at a little bit of an advantage because I spend 10 or 15 minutes before we actually start record on an intro call talking to my guest. And so I'm excited to bring the conversation to our audience today and to really talk about some of those uncomfortable things that don't always get talked about. So I appreciate you being here and being willing to do that. And we did a really short little intro for you. I would love, before we dig into the conversation, for you to take a moment and answer my famous question of who do your friends know you as? Who does your family know you as? Who is Manpreet?
Oh gosh, as far as my friends and family, I can't answer that question, but I know who I am. And I would say that I am somebody who is deeply interested in the evolution of my own consciousness in this life, and the evolution of the consciousness of others as well. That is what is the core of my being.
I love that. And that's a great answer. I had a guest the other day who said, well, I can't really put words in everybody else's mouth. So I need to reframe, who do you want people to know you as? Who do you think your friends and family know you as? Because you're the second one who's called me out on that in a couple of days. Um, so what I'm interested in talking about the conversation and with what you just said is the journey to where we are now. Because over 2023, I did a whole series about transitions, changes, seasons in life. And I know what I've really experienced of being on top of my game and being at the bottom of my game. And I will call it an ebb and flow, but while I was going through it, it did not feel like it was ebbing and flowing. It just felt like it was blah. And I know that from our earlier conversation, that's been what got you here. And I think that our listeners are in that place of wanting a holistic life, wanting more tools and abilities for coping mechanisms. And I know as the world seems to be more active, there's more coming at us. And I'm really feeling that. And I know a lot of other people are feeling about that. So I would love for you to take a moment and share as much or as little, as quick as long, because I know we'll explore it a little bit more. But what has your journey looked like to find Kundalini and yoga? And like I said, I know that's a multi-layered question. So you can just start with a little piece and then we'll dig more into it.
Well, I'll start from the beginning. And I found the practice of Kundalini yoga and meditation when I was about 25 years old. and I had moved to Los Angeles from Oregon, and I was feeling very overwhelmed with.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't my first time living in a city, but Los Angeles is very overwhelming. As far as cities are concerned, it's massive and expansive and sprawls out, right? And it was hard for me. And so I was really seeking something. And I had spent the, you know, probably since my teen years, I had been on and off of antidepressants of some kind. And I was getting to a point where I was wanting, I wasn't convinced that that was something I needed for my whole life. I just was like, no, that's a temporary solution. And I was
Mm-hmm.
starting to feel like, okay, like I want to stop taking them. And they recommend that you wean off of them. And so I attempted that multiple times, very unsuccessfully. It was very,
Mm-hmm.
very difficult. And so I was looking for an answer. And there was a Kundalini yoga studio near my home, and I would walk by there, eh, you know, maybe every other day. And I always felt like, okay, I feel like I need to go there. I feel like there's an answer there for me. I mean, that wasn't kind of my literal conversation with myself, but there was the draw to
Mm-hmm.
this place. It was called Golden Bridge Yoga, and I didn't know anything about yoga, I should say. I've never done yoga. I never considered doing yoga. Um, but something was definitely calling me to this place. And so eventually I ended up in a class there, and it changed my whole life. Um,
Mm-hmm.
at the end, we do what we call shavasana, which is you lie down and somebody will play the gong, or you listen to some beautiful music for, something like 5 to 10 minutes. And that was like, I knew. I knew. Once we
Mm.
got out of that, I had not been that relaxed probably my whole life.
Yeah.
And so I knew, and within, I have to say, the better part of a year, maybe like 8 or 9 months, I had totally stopped taking all forms of medication. And I didn't have to wean off of them. I just
Okay.
in the trash and I felt fine. I'm not advocating that that is what
Right.
other people should do. That's my disclaimer. I'm just sharing that that was my real experience. And that said a lot for me. And even to this day, I'm reminded, wow, that is huge. That I was able to just kind of walk away from the medication with no side effect. That's how much the practice of Kundalini Yoga balanced my body and my psyche.
Mm. So a couple things that you've said. First about LA. So I'm from a smaller city in North Carolina. One of our favorite TV shows happens in LA. And every time they do that big pan out shot of the whole city, I say to my husband, why does anybody live there? So I totally, as you were saying that, that's where my mind went to that pan out view of like, yeah, I could see that. Uh, like I said,
Yeah.
I live in kind of a smaller area in North Carolina and still feel that overwhelmed sometimes when you go out in public. So I can only imagine what it feels like in the city. And I appreciate you sharing the vulnerability of being on medication. And I think that's part of that really neat conversation to bring today, because I know for me, with the hormone changes that I've gone through, um, and I've shared this on other podcast episodes, I have a lot of mental health issues in my family. So my mom has had mental health issues. She's one of four sisters. I know two of them are diagnosed. Um, our son, we talk about that. He has mental health issues, and all of them are medicated because that's what they need. And so I'm not shaming anybody for medication. My son is 23. He's trying to figure it out and has said, I don't want to be here forever, but I need it right now. And for him, it's been a really neat journey of him figuring out when he needs to lower it, when he needs to up it. And I think part of that for him has been bringing that awareness to his body, because I think that's the first step. As you were kind of saying, that first step was knowing that you didn't want to do it, but you weren't ready. And that's a lot of bringing it into our bodies. And so with the mental health issues in my family, there are days that I think I am losing my mind and I definitely need to be medicated. I was just talking with a friend about it actually this morning, that last week I said to my husband something along the lines of, I don't know if it's hormones, if it's not sleeping, or if I'm losing my mind. Because I wanted him to say, honey, I think you need to be medicated. Um, Although, had he said it, I would have been mad at him for 3 days. What I instead did was I canceled all my calls for the day. I went to bed for 2.5 hours. I rested, I read. And for me, it brought me back to my center to realize that, yes, I probably have a tendency, as does my mother, as does my son, as does other family members. I've just found other coping mechanisms, and I use my diet, my exercise, and my meditation and my yoga practice to holistically manage my mental health. And I think there's a lot of people who are ready to do that and they don't know how to do it. And so I know for me several years ago, and we talked about this earlier, I tried Kundalini and it scared the ever living bejesus out of me. So I also, as you said, don't stop your medications immediately, want to say, if Kundalini feels intense, that's okay. So let's talk for a second as we continue the conversation about the different types of yoga and Kundalini versus maybe somebody needs Hatha. Uh, let's talk about that for a second, because I
Okay,
also
yeah.
think that part of that conversation is integration and quiet, because Shavasana is really powerful.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like I should add as well that when it comes to mental health in this time and space, um, in my experience, it's boiled down so much to conditioning. And
Mm,
that feeling that we get of overwhelm, I experience that all the time still.
mm-hmm,
But my perspective on it has shifted where, like you said, uh, when you cancel your calls, you take a 2 hour nap. To me, that is totally productive.
mm-hmm,
And this is how I operate in my life is if I can, and I work for myself, so usually I can just say, you know what, I'm not doing anything today because I'm not in a place where I'm going to be effective at it. And you know, I allow myself that space to my balance point is my priority.
mm-hmm,
And so I give myself that time and that space to balance myself, whatever that looks like for me. And usually it does mean just checking out. And I
mm-hmm,
don't mean disconnecting. I mean, okay, I'm not going to respond to emails today. I'm not going to do social media today. I'm not going to I'm going to just veg out and watch a movie, take a nap. I'm just going to kind of buck my responsibilities for a day. And I think that where the conditioning comes in is we're so conditioned that that is laziness, non-productivity, that you're sabotaging yourself. This is capitalist conditioning we're talking about. Capitalist conditioning is you must be productive all the time, produce, 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 work, work, work. No
right.
wonder why people are stressed and anxious.
Yeah.
Because that's not natural. It's not
Mm-hmm.
supportive to the human condition. It's not supportive to the psyche of us as sentient, sensitive beings. Um, and so I like to remind myself of that and others when you feel overwhelmed. And I ask myself, is this mental health or is this just unhealthy environment that we have to operate in? And then it comes to how well do I know myself? How well do I know how to balance myself? And I feel like that is where my practice has come in to support me so much, is it helped me learn who am I deeply and what do I actually need to have an enjoyable experience of life and not feel overwhelmed and not feel like I'm under this pressure to be like other people and produce like other people and whatever the kind of superficial determination of success is. I've rewritten the story and I'm like, no, what's my version of success? Do I feel
Yes.
happy? Do I feel good? Do I feel balanced? Okay, then I'm succeeding. And then I'm more effective at everything else in my life. And so, for anyone out there who's listening and they feel those, feelings of overwhelm and that pressure, and like maybe you're not good enough, and maybe you get tired and you feel fatigued, or you feel emotional, or you feel depressed, and you think, oh, I can't keep up. You're not alone, first of all.
Right.
But also, it's okay to feel that way in the circumstances of this planet that we live in and the expectations of productivity that are kind of just thrust upon us and conditioned into us. Um, and that is a challenge for most people, I would say, whether they're
Well,
aware of it.
yeah, absolutely. And, like, I love that you say that. And to add to it, that sometimes we can't take the day off.
Sure.
Sometimes the best mental health care that we can give ourselves is to take 5 minutes, go lock ourselves in the closet, lock ourselves in the bathroom stall, and breathe. And that is just as mental health caring as me shutting down. And for me, Friday, I had been moving through, I don't want to use the word pushing through, but I'd been struggling for a week or two and moving through it because I wasn't in a place where I was ready to shut down. And Friday, it was I either have a breakdown or I stop. And so that was
Mhm.
knowing myself to know the week before I could keep going because I was checking stuff off my list. And by checking stuff off my list, it was alleviating my anxiety. Then I
Mhm.
came to Friday where it was if I don't take a day, then I'm done and I'm going to be in worse shape. So, as we were talking about knowing ourselves with medication and knowing ourselves through that mental health, I think that's another level of awareness of knowing when to keep putting one foot in front of the other, not pushing, but putting one foot in front of the other and knowing when to call it for 24 hours or 48 or however long you need to.
Yeah, I mean, there are times in life where we have to rally, and we
Yes.
don't get to take time off. And um, sometimes if I feel overwhelmed, often what I'll do is a lot of it's mindset for me, because I do have times where I'm like, oh wow, like I could really use a day off, but I don't get to have that. So
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes what I do is I go, okay, when is the next period that I get to rest?
Mm.
Like, so I know, okay, it's coming. Maybe it's 5 minutes, maybe it's 30 minutes. And for me, that's like, I'm going to lie down,
Mm-hmm.
or and I'm going to, chant mantra in my head, or I'm going to do a breathing practice while I'm lying down. If I feel like I have the energy, I'll sit up and do some kind of breath practice, mantra or meditation, or even an exercise of some kind. But it gives me that reassurance that the rest is that rest period is coming, so I don't go into the doom and gloom of like, oh my gosh, I can't handle it. Because here's the thing, when we go into that mindset, it builds momentum.
Right.
So the mind starts going in this momentum of, oh my gosh, I can't handle it, oh my gosh, this and that, and it's like this spiral down. I can't afford that if I'm
Right.
needing to rally, right? We can't afford that if we need to rally. So the practice, the meditation practice, and the yoga and the mantra, they really help me to be more masterful of my thoughts. So
Mm-hmm.
when I need rally, I'm not going into the negative of like, oh my gosh, I can't do it. I'm going into like, okay, so you have this, 3 hours where you have to teach a class. And after that 3 hours, you're going to have 20 minutes. And, going into the positives of why I'm doing what I have to do, whether
Mm.
maybe you go to work and you have to be in an office 9 to 5, but giving yourself that pep talk, and if you can't do it for yourself, I have different spiritual teachers that I'll listen to, lectures from them, and they help me they do the pep talk for me.
Yes.
Excuse me. So that way, if I can't muster the positive thoughts, I've got like my default, somebody else who's going to support me through that. But it's really, I think each person's individual journey to find those things that support us in whatever it is we need to do to get through it, to show
Hmm.
up. And sometimes, it's like, what do I need when on those days I have to rally? And then what do I need on those days where, maybe I'm just answering emails and doing a lot of correspondence and, kind of more, digital or social media type things, and, maybe those days I can afford to have a 2 hour nap. I do have the time, but there's absolutely days where we don't. And some people I know, you work a 40-hour week minimum, and you don't get to just say, I need to take a mental health day. That's a whole other conversation as far as, advocating for mental health days in the workplace.
Yeah.
Um, I think is very important, but um, finding that time within the day to really connect with oneself
Hmm.
and go inside. We're in such an externalized world, so much distraction, so much external influence. We're inundated with information constantly, and that is hard on the
Yeah.
psyche. It's a lot to wade through, it's a lot to navigate through. So, meditation, and this is my experience, and my belief is it's essential in this time and space.
Absolutely.
It helps us to know ourselves, have a connection to ourselves among all the distraction of information. And and I will say that, in regard to your question, the difference between Kundalini yoga and like a Hatha yoga or a vinyasa. So I often will say that my only experience with yoga outside of Kundalini yoga is one Hatha class. And I took the class, and I say, and I go, okay, I get it. It's a physical practice. It really helps to strengthen the physical body, and it felt really good. But I was really sold, and I am really sold on the Kundalini yoga. And I respect all practices and forms of yoga, but the Kundalini was really, I felt such a deep awakening and a
Mm.
deep recognition, and such a, I had such a, we'll just say I had an experience that was unforgettable.
Mm.
And that's really what's kept me on this path for 18 years.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm typically someone, when it comes to exercise or something like this, I'll get bored, going to the gym, you know, jogging on the street, hiking, like I'll get bored. I've never been bored of Kundalini yoga. It's never boring for me. And it's different, and that's how it's different from me personally. But technically speaking, we call Kundalini yoga the yoga of awareness because it incorporates, we call them the four pillars. We have the Kriya yoga, we have the meditation, we have the mantra, and then we have the pranayama, the breath. And all of those things are usually incorporated into a single class. And that is why it can feel really overwhelming for people,
Hmm.
because you're doing mantra, you're basically using these four things to move a lot of energy. And um, you know, comparing it to the one hatha class I did, there was no mantra. We did a little meditation at the end, but there's no mantra. There's not pranayam. You know, you're going through a sequence, and you know, I just felt like, okay, Kundalini yoga is dynamic in a way that
Mhm.
I enjoy.
I think that's fun. And my disclaimer about the time that I did try a Kundalini class is I didn't know that's what I was doing. I was doing one online from somebody who I followed who I was like, oh, I really like their energy. And I was right at this moment in my journey where it was about to just go deep and I didn't know it. So when I did Kundalini and it started raising the Kundalini energy in me, I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. I wasn't ready for it at that moment. It sounds like you kept feeling that tug and you were ready for it when you found it. One of the
Yeah,
things that you mentioned that I love to talk about, and let's highlight you a little bit on it, is mantras. I love, so I'm a big meditator. I,
mhm.
I, I would probably say that I meditate 5 to 6 days a week and I meditate 30 to 45 minutes. I do guided meditation. So I can't sit still quiet meditation because meditation is where I go to quiet. Um, and so um, I was introduced to chanting when I was doing my 300-hour yoga teacher training. Like in my 200-hour, we did chanting, but my teacher didn't ever explain what it was. She's just like, do this. And we sat in a room and did it with her. And when I did my 300-hour, she really taught what each chant meant and using different mantras. And I think those are something what I personally love about it and using this as a tool is when my brain won't stop and I don't feel like meditation works for me, doing a mantra with my mala beads or chanting after I've put a couple essential oils on some different acupoints. I feel like that occupies my brain enough so that it clears my brain.
Mm-hmm.
What are your
I think you
thoughts?
nailed it there. Occupying the mind with something that is beneficial for the mind. That's
Mm-hmm.
basically what meditation is, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people think of meditation, and we have different types. You have like the Zen Buddhist meditation. You have, you know, transcendental meditation. Um, and you know, a lot of people think that meditation is trying, you know, it's like, oh, think of nothing.
Right.
I
No.
saw something recently that Sadhguru posted, and he said, "You'll think of nothing," and I'm, you know, abridging what he said, but he said, "You'll think of nothing when you die."
Yes.
And I was like, I feel so seen by that
Yeah.
statement because I always, you know, I tell people, I go, you know, I don't stop thinking. Meditation doesn't make me stop thinking. And you know, I'm not going to say that the point of meditation is to not think or anything like that, but I think what I will say is that the benefit of the different types of meditation, a lot of them have you focusing on something, whether
Hmm.
it's a mantra. You know, in Buddhist meditation, they have different kind. In Buddhism, the different lineages have different meditations, and some you focus on, you know, like something like this behind me in your mind's eye, where you open your eyes and you focus on it and you chant a mantra. Kundalini meditation is very similar in that you're busy.
Right.
You're usually chanting a mantra. Maybe you're doing a breath simultaneously and you're holding your hands, you know, like this in front of your face, you know, or there's thousands of different meditations in the, you know, Kundalini yoga lineage. But um, I, it's really to focus your mind on something that's transporting you to a better, more enjoyable experience. We call
Mhm.
it a transportation system, Kundalini yoga and meditation. You're moving from a less enjoyable, uncomfortable place to a more beneficial, kind of useful, enjoyable place. So how does that work? Well, we have to create patterns in the body through different yoga postures. We're creating a new pattern than the old or default pattern that our body is running that's not enjoyable, not comfortable. And then we, deepen it with the meditation, also creating a new, more enjoyable pattern through the mantra, the breath, and, potentially a mudra or a physical posture. So I think in its simplicity, that is the best way you can describe it. Kundalini yoga balances the chakras, balances the energy in the body, and then the meditation is kind of like taking out the trash.
I like that. I'm going to write
Yeah.
that one down.
I mean, and it again, why it's so essential in this time and space to meditate is because our minds get very cluttered with all this information, all this intense influx of information. So the meditation is helping us constantly empty the trash, of the subconscious mind. And so there's one teacher who said that meditation is your civic duty, and I just appreciate that so much, because how different would this world be if we were all meditating, even if it was just like three
Mhm.
minutes a day. And
Yeah.
and that's something I should add too, is that if you're new to meditation and you want to start but you don't know how to start, just give yourself 3 minutes.
Hmm.
You can look up, Kundalini yoga meditation. You can Google it, and you can do the practice for 3 minutes. You can reach out to me. I'm happy to point you in the right direction, um, or whatever maybe you already have a practice in mind that you want to try. But 3 minutes is a great place to start. You don't need to be like, okay, I'm going to do 35, 30, 45 minutes, just like right out the gate. The
Right.
sustainability of that is low.
Well, and I love that you said that, because the opt-in on my website is actually when meditation doesn't work, and it's a little mini class that talks about don't. And then I give you 4 meditations that start at 4 minutes, 10 minutes, work your way up to it. Cause it took me a good 6, 8 months to get comfortable with 22 minutes.
Mhm.
And then I start 45 minutes, and now my body craves that long. And
And I
sometimes I'm
feel
like, I'm fine, I'm busy, I don't have time, and I forget. And I love when I forget, because then when I go back to my meditation practice, it's coming home.
Yeah, yeah. And I have to say, I even think, 6 months to get into a 22-minute practice is a short amount of time.
Well, that was after 20
Sure.
years. That was six
Okay,
months
okay.
of dedication
Oh,
after
so
20 years of dabbling. I'm sorry, I
okay,
misled you
fair
on
enough.
that part.
I mean, everybody's different too. I feel like that's something that's important to say, is everybody is different. Like some
Hmm.
people, it took me probably 10 years before I got to a point where I could meditate and feel more masterful over
Hmm.
my meditative experience. And then I look at my partner, who's probably, maybe 2 or 3 years meditating, and he's like a statue. He's so
Mm,
solid. He doesn't squirm, he doesn't move, he's like locked in, and I'm like, who are you? But
yeah.
again, it's different for everyone, and I think one of the important things is that you don't judge yourself. There's no right or wrong way to begin your practice. You're doing it for yourself
Hmm.
and for your own sanity, peace of mind, and relief. Um, you're not doing it for your neighbor or your mom or your sister or your partner or your kids. No, you're doing it for you. So, the compete and compare mentality's got to go in order
Hmm.
for us to make, real progress.
Yeah. Well, and I think part of it, as I mentioned, sometimes I get busy and think I don't need it or I don't have time for it. And there's times that I can't get to that place.
Mm.
And that's okay. And that's where giving ourselves grace of sometimes it's like spot on, here I am. And other days it's like, yeah, I'm going to tap out even though I'm halfway through this audio, because meditation and your practice is not supposed to irritate you.
That's so funny because in Kundalini Yoga, we have an opposite perspective, which is
Yeah.
that the more effective it is, the more irritating it will be. Um,
Oh.
because, if you look at it like this, so I've been doing a meditation, for the same one for a very, very long time.
Mhm.
And it is, I joke about it because it's not getting easier. It used to be a lot easier. It
Mhm.
seems to be getting harder. It's like I go over these like peaks and valleys, and one of those peaks was literally like 2 years. Or no, I would say it was more of a valley.
Yeah.
It's just like, is this even working? Like, I'm so irritated. But it, you know, the kind of philosophy in Kundalini Yoga is that you are changing the ego, you're changing the mind. And so
Mm.
when the ego starts to get poked and provoked, that is actually when you are doing the most transformation. You know something's changing because the mind starts to avoid it.
Mhm.
It's like, oh, I don't, oh, this is uncomfortable, this is uncomfortable. And it depends on, kind of how deep you want to go as a practitioner. And there's no, again, no right or wrong. But, you know, my teacher said once, he's like, that meditation that makes you want to crawl out of your own skin, he's like, that's probably the meditation you should do. However, if you're not going to do it, you're not going to
Mm.
do it. It's
Mhm.
really just, where am I at? How much am I ready to sit in my own discomfort? Because in my experience, that's where I got very real with myself, and my
Mhm.
relationship with myself transformed immensely, because I'm like, who are you when you're uncomfortable? you know do you want to run away? Do you want to make excuses? Do you want to, and that relationship to the self is so important. And I think a lot of us, we don't ever get there
Mhm.
because we do run away. We do decide, okay, I'm not going to do this today. And that is also okay. But there is something to be said for sitting in the discomfort,
Absolutely.
and allowing ourselves to deepen that relationship of, who am I when I'm uncomfortable?
I love that we have different views on meditation, and where you said you've been doing the same meditation, that's where I would get bored. Like I couldn't
Mhm.
do the same one that long. Now I use the same person and I use a variety of his meditations, but I need a little different variety in my life. Um, but where you say sitting in your discomfort, I mean, I think that's such an important part of the journey. And you and I discussed, I took my yoga teacher training, my 200 and working on my 300, not because I ever have any intention of teaching, but because it deepens my practice. And I
Mhm.
believe that's how you started and then decided to teach. Um,
Yeah.
for me, though, my yoga teacher training is sitting in my discomfort. And I remember we were coming to the maybe last module or something in our yoga teacher training. And the teacher was kind of doing her wrap up of what the program had been. And everybody was giving their gratitudes. And she looked me in the eye from the circle and said, I really loved learning how to sit in my discomfort by watching you. And I laughed and said, was it that obvious? And she said, oh, yeah, it was. And there is a lot to be said for that, of sitting steadfast because it's that moment that's going to get you to the next level. There is
Mhm.
also, and this goes back to our earlier part of the conversation, there's also that moment of being uncomfortable and knowing yourself well enough to say, this is not beneficial to me. This
Mhm.
is going to make me stop. this is not where I'm supposed to be. And that comes, I think, from a lot of awareness and a lot of self-work, self-exploration on the journey to know when is it right to sit in your discomfort and when is it okay to give yourself to the grace to not stay in that place.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it will be certainly different per person. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I am, of the philosophy and just the experience of, um, you know, uh, part of my journey in mastering the mind has been to learn when my mind is trying to steer me away from something that's
Mm-hmm.
beneficial. We all have that, the subconscious
Yeah.
sabotage. The reason why we don't follow through on that, maybe that book we're going to write, or, creating a website for our business, or starting a new business, or, whatever it is that, your contribution to the planet is. And I think that what my meditation and more so the discipline has taught me is to sit in that discomfort and be able to rally when I have to rally, and to show up again and again and again, even when the self doubt is extreme. Because I think we all go through that self doubt, no matter how confident, talented, experienced. We're gonna have those moments where we question: Is it worth it? Why do I, why am I even making the effort? Why am I doing this? And the practice has allowed me to move through those places of
Mm-hmm.
discomfort and know it's just my mind.
Right.
I'm not going to give up. It's just my mind. I just need to
Yeah.
keep going. And I personally needed that experience. I need to go deeper and deeper and deeper into understanding my negative mind and how tricky and slippery it is, in order for me to continue to show up for my visions and my purpose in this life. And I know that's what I need. Some people, I look at my partner, he's just naturally very meditative. He doesn't need the same kind of discipline that I have, or that I need. Um, but I think what's important is knowing oneself enough to know, uh, you know, what is serving me and what is not. And my
Mm-hmm.
philosophy is, just through what I've been through, is that meditation will always serve you. Maybe it's, you chant mantra one, and you're like, okay, I'm not going to do this super hard meditation. I'm going to, learn some chants, or some kind of breath work or something like this. That's also what's great about the Kundalini meditations, is there's so many. You couldn't possibly get bored. Um, but the essence of the practice is that anyone who does the practice will see some benefit, but
Mm-hmm.
not everyone is going to resonate with it either,
Right.
and that's okay. you know I'm not into like blanket statements of, oh, this is going to work for every person, this is the answer for every person. I don't subscribe to that philosophy, but I do know that whoever chooses to go to a class will have an experience.
Well, and I love that that's why there's so many forms of yoga and why there's variations of it, because it gives you, as you said, it's not a blanket, um, but it gives you more variety and more options to try. Because some days I just need to lay on my mat for 20 minutes and do a yin practice because I need that quiet space. And other times I need to get that anxiety out through a vinyasa class. And, there's just so many varieties that, as you said, you don't want to say Kundalini's the blanket answer. If you find one and it doesn't feel right, don't give up. Keep going. Keep trying different teachers, keep exploring meditations, because there's so much out there. I think it's, as you were talking about, kind of that dedication to, do I want to get through this? And how willing am I to commit myself? What is my devotion to my growth? And I love that you said, to your contribution to the world, what is my commitment to that?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think that in order for us to be committed to our contribution to the world, we have to first just really practice the commitment to ourselves and getting better.
Mm,
And whatever that looks like. Some people, I think I was given an extreme set of circumstances in life. And so I'm like, okay, well, I require extreme measures to correct those things. And what, or we should say maybe what is perceived as extreme by some.
mm-hmm.
Um, for me, it's just reality. I'm like, oh, okay, this is what I have to do in order to feel balanced and like, do what I came here to do. Um, but everybody has something to contribute
Mm-hmm.
to the planet, and the difference will be is, do you realize, is that realized for you in this life or not?
Mm-hmm.
And discipline is a huge part of that, because I think people think like, oh, okay, like the result is the goal, and really it's the journey. So just because I accomplish a goal, or I realize some vision that I have with a creative project or something like this, it doesn't end there. So I don't ever look at it like, okay, I've done that. Okay, I've accomplished something. I'm like, no, you've not accomplished anything. You're accomplished when you leave the planet, and then we'll see what
Mm-hmm.
you left behind.
Yeah.
So seeing it as a continual process, that everything is continuously moving, continuously flowing. And so, with that kind of mindset, I don't think I've made it,
Mm-hmm.
because I think that's actually like very dangerous place to be, is when we're like, oh, I've made it, because then all the momentum stops. And then what?
Right.
You see a lot of people who retire, right? And they're like, now what do I do? Like,
Mm-hmm.
this was my goal. Now I have it. So that's just one example, but you see it all the time with people who, it's like they create a business and the business is successful, and then they're like, okay, now what do I do? I have everything I thought I wanted. You see that a lot of times, people who are celebrities, they get famous, they start making the money, and then, a lot of, we see this all the time. People kind of get unhinged. And it's like, because that momentum can never stop. It's like, we don't just have a point of life where we achieve and it ends there and everything's great. Life has to keep moving. We can't get stagnant, because that's where trouble starts. So, again, this is kind of like, the macro in the micro and the macro. The micro is the practice and the daily kind of application of the yoga and meditation. And so that way, when I go out into the world and I'm relating to the world, I can apply that consciousness, that pattern that I've developed in myself, when I go out and I have to deal with life, and I have to, you know, uh, continue the forward momentum of the energy.
Well, and I think, the term that I like to put to what you're describing is, it's peeling back the layers of the onion,
Mm-hmm.
of keeping the momentum going, keeping doing it. And, I was talking with that same friend earlier today that, one of the mentors I follow sent an email out about using a different oil on an acupressure point, because now is the time to go deep. And I said to my friend, I just need to breathe. Like, I need my head above water. My shoulders can stay in the water, but I just need to breathe. And so taking that time in moving forward and continuing on the journey, but also giving ourselves, which goes back to the earlier part of the conversation, giving ourselves those moments to breathe and
Mm-hmm.
permission to do that. so that we can then dive back down and keep the momentum going and digging through the journey.
Yeah, I mean, and I would just add that I think they're the same thing. You
Mm.
know, it's really just knowing yourself and knowing, okay, what do I need? You know, and taking time to rest is part of my forward momentum.
Mm-hmm.
Because,
Yes.
you know, and I think that's what's so important in now in this kind of consciousness for the collective is knowing that rest is part of it. It's all integrated. It's not like rest is separate from work. Like work and rest are intertwined and equally important to each other. And I think that this is where the psyche and the conversation around productivity is evolving because we are
Mm-hmm.
starting to see a lot of conversation about how productivity is rest and rest is productivity. Everybody is going to need that to different degrees. But really, that self care is productive and finding, you know, each individual has to tune into what self care looks like for them, you know. Because you know some people they're not nap people. They don't. I can't. I want to be a nap person, but I just can't nap usually. So I'll
Yeah.
just lie down and you know have my moment where I don't have any responsibility towards anything except for my own self.
Mm.
Um, but that is part of the forward movement. And this is what I am passionate about interjecting into these conversations is that there's no separation between the two anymore.
Mm. I love that the conversation has come full circle. It's come back to that space of rest, being self care and productivity, and what keeps us moving forward. Because that's where I was Friday. I had to rest to be able to move forward. So it really is, as you said, it's a joint conversation. It's not an either or, it's not separate parts of the conversation. It is a full, complete circle, and full, complete conversation is to have all of that. That's harmony.
Yeah, yeah. That's the balance. You know, that's where peace comes in, is because, okay, I have the ability to give myself what I need in a given moment. And that um, is, I think, the power of meditation is it gives us that relationship to ourselves to hear, oh, I need to drink some water.
Mhm.
I need to, you know, just take some breaths. I need to go outside and be in the sun or plant my feet on the earth. Or, wow, I have got a meeting right now where I really have to be on it. So I'm going to, you know, just rally and know that I get to rest in an hour or, you know, a couple hours. You know, really creating this relationship with ourselves so we can support ourselves through every aspect of our lives.
I love that you've used the word rally several times, because I don't like thinking of pushing through. And Matthew and I kind of had that conversation yesterday of when there's time that we have to keep putting one foot in front of the other versus pushing through, because pushing through feels counterproductive to everything I've worked on in my growing stage right now. So I've written rally really big on my piece of paper, underlined it twice, and I'm going to start using that word. So I'm really grateful for the conversation that you've brought today, the new terminology that you've brought today, and those things that are going to have listeners thinking, is meditation my dedication? If I'm uncomfortable, do I take a break or do I keep pushing through? So I appreciate the yin and yang of the conversation that we've been able to have today.
Yeah, it's been so great to be here and you know share my experiences with you and everyone.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for your time. And I know that listeners are going to want to learn more about Kundalini yoga. They're going to want to learn about you. And we didn't even get to talk about your chanting and your beautiful, beautiful voice. But I know people are going to, I really want people to check you out. So, how can they find out more about you and how can they connect with you?
Well, first I'd point you to my website. So it's just www.manpreetcarmusic.com. And then Instagram as well. same Instagram handle, Manpreet Kaur Music. And then I'm also on Spotify. So if you want to listen to some mantra music, you can look me up, Manpreet, Manpreet, and you'll find me through my album, which is called Flowers of Devotion.
That sounds beautiful. And we'll put all the links to that in our show notes below on the website, wherever people are finding you. And a lot of our listeners are on Spotify, so they can just flip right over and do a little search for you. So thank you so much for your time, and thank you for the conversation. And I did not know you were on Spotify, so I will definitely be adding you to my morning chant list. So thank you so much.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Cris.
Thank you for joining me in the conversation today. If you enjoyed this episode, I invite you to subscribe to the Grounding Journey podcast to make sure you get access to all of our upcoming episodes and some really cool past ones. While you're there, I'd appreciate if you'd leave a review.